Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Warner and Golden podcast. Well, today is not your typical Warner and Golden podcast day because today we have a very special guest, and his name is Joe Merly. So,
Yo, what's up?
Joe, what's going on, man?
Not much. Just hanging in there. How about you?
Me too. Getting there, getting there. How
Yeah,
about
I'm
Yeah.
how about
great.
how about you, Maximilian?
I'm great, and it's very good to have Joe on the show. Great voice, great guy.
He's got the
Thank you.
best voice I've ever heard, dude. Come on.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad to
Yeah.
be here.
By the way, yes, that is his real voice for all of you guys
In
wondering
case
that
you were
have
wondering,
never met
yes.
Joe before. That is his actual voice.
Yes.
All right, so getting into this episode, right? That not too much has changed except for the fact that Portland is now burning. Um, so we do have some stuff to talk about. As it pertains to our last episode, maybe a little bit about privilege, and then I also have some stuff that I want to talk about with the amount of virtue signaling I've been seeing online. There has been so much virtue signaling, and I do want to address that as we get here. But obviously, I know that you guys are excited to talk about Portland. Joe, I know you're excited to talk about cancel culture,
Yeah.
and Joe, I'm ready. I am excited to talk about your switch from left to right, and Max
Sort
actually had
of.
a similar shift, but the opposite direction. So he made a shift. He made a shift from right to left. So this should be interesting, and that's actually how I want to start this off, just kind of as a preface, so that people kind of know where we're coming from when we say our, so that people like understand where we're coming from right before we say our views and takes on the matters at hand. So, Joe, if I may ask, when
Yes.
did this start happen? When did this change start to happen?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that, well, I do, my results do definitely lean right on the political compass test. I wouldn't consider myself a particularly ideological person. I'm not too confound on ideology in general, but so just to start there. But I'd say that it changed my perspective. I guess you can say broadened. My perspective broadened when I was probably in like the end of sophomore, maybe into early junior year of high school. So like very recently. So like probably this, I'd say like this past year, year and a half is when it happened. And when I was, especially when I was a freshman, and Noah Golden especially knows this, I
Mm-hmm.
was a hardcore leftist. I was definitely confounded to the, much more liberal ideology.
We
But
we had
now
many conversations,
we did, yes. And if we had those conversations, those exact same conversations today,
which
they'd
we
probably be
have.
a lot different. We have, yes. And no one knows that they're much different than they were a couple of years ago.
Yes, yes. So let's get the other side who made the opposite change, Max.
Indeed. So to start this off, as many of you already know, in my freshman and sophomore year, I was very, very, very ardently pro-Trump. I was very
Wow.
conservative. I was like total right-leaning guy. I used to be, drain the swamp and fake news. I was that kind of guy. And then I realized, like, in the summer of last year, of course, we had the Zelensky affair. The whole idea that Trump asked the president of Ukraine to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. And the real question was, I thought that that was the real first time. Beforehand, I had already been starting to question what I believed. But that was the real turning point where I said, I can't support this. Enough is enough. And when I officially cut my ties, with my beliefs for in favor of Trump. And a lot of people would say, well, Max, why would you do that? It was perfectly legal. And you have a bunch of apologists who say that it was legal. But the way I see it, I felt at the time, and I still do, that it was a very unconstitutional action to make. And I still feel to now, that it was not a proper thing to do. And, as a result of that one affair, of that one scandal, I began to question what I believed, listen to more news sources, listen to independent medical journals and such. And eventually, I began to gradually shift left because I began to reject the cult of personality around Trump, which I can say is very prevalent among the right today. And, in the end, I ended up being a Bernie supporter. After Bernie dropped out, I'm not a huge fan of Biden, not at all. But, I still remain a pretty left wing guy, although I am more of a centrist than a socialist. I'm not very supportive of communism or socialism or what have you. So, yeah, that's me.
I feel like some of our conversations that you and I have had, Max, kind of got you back a little bit more towards the middle, because
Yeah,
because for me, I've I started off, when I first got into politics, which was a long time ago. I was on the Democrat side because I was born into a Democrat family, and in 2016, when all these videos came out of a lot of different things, but mostly feminism was the biggest thing that really got me to I like when like all the radical feminists that I saw online and how they all supported Clinton. I was just like, ooh, the Democrat Party's not supporting me. The Democrat is supporting a completely different audience. But then I saw Trump, and I saw some of his views on things, and one big thing that did catch my attention that so many people hate about him is his personality, but I kind of like a guy that can actually, get stuff done rather than because the because one problem that Andrew Yang had, I loved Andrew Yang. I loved everything he stood for. Almost everything he stood for. But the problem that he had was just that he was such, a quiet kind of guy, right? So it would have been he kind of might have been a little bit easier pushed over, but Trump was very hard fighting for what he believed in, and that is something that I respect out of, you know, a candidate because they can actually, get stuff done. And and for me, after 2016 being an absolute hectic year in terms of, seeing all the left wing feminists going crazy and seeing all this hate about Trump, but actually fact checking and seeing that what he was saying actually wasn't as bad as it might seem, or it's kind of putting out of context, whatever it may be. But you got to remember, I was a Gary Johnson supporter in 2016. Like in 2016, I would wear Gary Johnson shirts to school and all that type of stuff. Big Gary Johnson supporter. But out of the two main party candidates, Trump was my guy. And once Trump won the presidency, I've been able to support him enough. Keep in mind the word enough, because there are
hmm,
situations where it's kind of hard to defend him.
Definitely.
that's true. Very true.
But I did hear this, and it's something that I like. It's something that I completely agree with. Um, I don't know if Joe knows who Papa Gut is, but Max, I know you know who he is. Um,
Definitely.
but
I have not heard.
so he's, would you say, a political commentator on TikTok?
Oh my god.
Hmm.
And
Okay. That explains why I haven't heard of him.
yeah, he's one of the most, he's the best TikToker. Like, he's my favorite personally,
I
and
mean, he's
he's very based. He is very based.
yes, and he's
Based.
very independent. He looks at both sides and he makes very good points.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
So I'm
sounds like my kind of guy.
whenever I watch his videos, I always find myself agreeing with him, de- regardless of him criticizing the left or criticizing the right. I've always found myself agreeing with him. So to that, I just gotta say, I'm in the middle, like him at this point. At this point right now, I am basically at that midpoint, and I've done political compass tests, and I'm almost directly in the middle, which is crazy because Joe, you might remember 2018. I was pretty right wing,
Yeah, I
Mm.
can't remember that.
so I've always tried
Yeah.
to stay towards the middle, but sometimes I can get pissed off and I might seem further right than you guys might expect. And also to some people on the right, I seem like I'm on the left. So that's the funny thing about politics today.
This is why I don't
Indeed.
consider myself confound to a particular ideology, because I've kind of had similar experiences with you. Maybe not always the same way. Like back in 2016, I probably was I disliked Trump a lot more than you probably did. But like in general, like I've kind of been troubled by certain issues and I found myself, going back and forth. And I think what I discovered is that sometimes I agree with the left, sometimes I agree with the right, but that I'm not, for me personally, as of right now, I don't consider myself just an ideological person in general,
Hmm.
and I think people, especially in this country with the two-party system. I mean, I know there's the Libertarian Party and this Democratic Socialists or whatever, but for the most part, it's the Democrats versus the
Or the National
Republicans.
Socialist.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people feel pressured to like be in an ideology and just kind of willfully blind and just follow the set of beliefs that come along with their ideology.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
There's,
Yeah.
that's a reason why for example, I don't like to tie into a political party because, the Democrats have completely fallen behind Joe Biden, and I don't really care for him. And the Republicans have gone towards Trump, and I don't really care for him either. I really don't like the two-party system. I wish we had more options. I'm more of an independent guy. I'm more left-leaning than right-leaning. I'll admit that. But at the same time, I think we should have plenty of options instead of just two. And unfortunately, it's true in today's society that if you don't vote for Trump or Biden, you're pretty much wasting your vote. I mean, with the electoral college and the two-party
Yeah.
system, your vote, if you vote for Joe Jorgensen, your vote is pretty much not going to be counted, as far
It's
as
gonna be
I'm.
like useless at this point. It'll be
Yeah,
freaking obsolete.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's really sad. We should be able to elect anybody who we find to be qualified, and that's something that I really criticize. Right or left doesn't matter.
That's why I always say that I want a ranked voting system. It's something that solves almost all the problems there because it gives because it does give you more candidates that you agree with, and it does really provide a majority rules sort of thing. But I remember what I wanted to say before that Papa Gut once said. He said in a video, I don't remember which one it was, but he said I remember he's not a Trump supporter. He's not really a fan of Trump, but he said this. Um, he's not necessarily as bad as you would like to think he is, and I think that's very true. He is exaggerated. The evil of Donald Trump is very much exaggerated to more than what it actually is, in my opinion.
I'd say it is when he's
Yeah,
compared to Hitler, for God's sake.
yeah. That's just look. I'm a left leaning person, but we can't go comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. I mean,
I mean, people
Hitler
legitimately do
was
that.
Yeah, I mean, Hitler
Sorry,
was a
sorry.
guy who, ordered the deaths of millions of Jews, Roma and Sinti, the Freemasons, certain Christian groups. He went around pretty much anybody who hated him and slaughtered them. And Trump, we have not seen Trump, rounding up his political opponents. He said some pretty nasty things against them, but we haven't seen like rounding up of political opponents, rounding up of minorities. Well, if you count people who came here illegally as detention centers, but I don't think you can call those concentration camps per se. Nobody's being exterminated, and the way I see it, this whole Trump is Hitler argument is completely stupid. I mean, as a left-leaning person, as an independent, it's really a bad argument fundamentally, within, in and out. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's where I'm at. And I do think that sometimes we do need to get past that gag reflex, whether it's on one side or the other, but we need to get past the initial gag reflex whenever someone says something. So if Joe Biden says
Agreed.
something, I'm
Yeah.
obviously going to be on the side of, oh, that's awful at first, because that's what your first instinct is. You connect the two things, you connect the name and what they said, and you think it's awful. But if you can get past that initial gag reflex and really open up your eyes to what you're seeing, that's when you really become, for lack of a better term, I think you guys might like the term that I'm about to use. You become a little bit more woke, might I say.
Yes.
Oh, don't
Yes.
use that word. I don't like that word, but okay.
Well, it's a better use of the word than
Certainly than it has been being used,
yes.
yes.
Yes. And
Maybe you guys want to go into the woke culture since we just brought that up.
yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
but before we do that, I do just want to put something out there. Or maybe this can even tie us into that. So I did this thing on my story a few weeks ago, and I did this little test, this little experiment, and I found the results very funny. So I made a post saying that Trump isn't racist, and I listed some things that proved that he wasn't racist, at least in those situations. And I got so many people sliding up on my story and either blocking me or saying that I'm canceled. And I was just like, holy shit, dude.
Hashtag Noah Golden
Yeah.
is
Yep,
canceled.
that's
Yeah.
where it came from. That's where it came from. And
Ah,
then
that explains it.
a couple weeks later, after pretty much everyone forgot about the post that I made on my story, I made a post bashing Trump. Nobody slid up, nobody blocked me,
Interesting. Just
anything.
Noah, just out of curiosity, if you don't mind me asking, like when you were bashing Trump, what were some of the things you were pointing out?
I
If
said that so many of the things he was doing was discriminatory and stupid, and I don't know why he was doing it.
yeah,
Which is a little bit of which is, I did this as an experiment, so I did it on the extremes of both sides just to see what people would do. And also, and I do just want to point this out there, about 70% of the people on my Snapchat story are Trump supporters.
Hmm.
wow.
So
So that means like the 30%
so like the
really makes
30
up for it.
so the 30% of people that hate Trump were so loud in that moment when I
Yeah.
said that Trump isn't racist, and then blocked me, started arguing with me. It was it
What
was
a
an absolute
Well,
it was
yeah.
a fun time,
then
and and
Nice.
one conclusion that I made from it, and
Wow.
it's obviously not a set conclusion, but it's a conclusion that I think we all might have in our heads, that the left is a lot louder than the right. And I feel like one big problem is that I do see a lot more immaturity from the left, as they're not able to really put on a very good conversation, as they get so emotional when
yeah,
talking about it.
I also
I
think that. Oh, go ahead, Max.
no, you can go ahead.
All
Mine is
right,
going to
thank
be
you.
pretty
I
long.
was,
So
thank you. I was just gonna say that quickly, that going to the whole point about how the left is louder than like the right in that way. So the way I look at it is that the alt right, so like the really extremists, like the dangerous guys, white
Yeah. The
nationalists,
one that
ethno
no one
nationalists.
likes, not even the people on the right. Like,
Right, right, exactly. Those people aren't as loud as the very radical leftists, and they are working more in secrecy. So it's arguable as kind of which ideology is more dangerous in America right now,
yeah.
because you could argue that, well, since the leftists are so loud right now, because they're the ones actually trying to put forth policy and change our society. But then you got the alt right working in much more secrecy, and then you could argue that inevitably makes it more dangerous.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's why I didn't argue for how dangerous it is, but I argued more on the point of immaturity and
Yeah,
loudness. And I
Oh,
did see a
yes.
lot more of immaturity and
Yeah.
loudness coming from the left.
I mean, let me, as a left leaning person, let me say this. I mean, I was one of the 30% who didn't attack Noah when he said that Trump wasn't racist, even though I deeply, deeply have, shall I say, disagreements with that argument. I was not the one, I'm not a person who goes around attacking people. I mean, most people know that by now. If you and I have a political disagreement, I will talk it out. And even if we can't agree, I will shake hands and say, you know what, my friend, I agree to disagree. And that's the thing. I think that's sad. A lot of people on the left can't compromise. They can't agree to disagree. They say, it's my way or the highway. Like they're always so, if I can't prove you wrong, I'm going to dox you. I'm going to, call you a racist. I'm going to do this, that,
I'm
and
going
the
to end
other.
your career.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
have to understand that we are, in America at least, we have a plethora of different ideas. We have to understand what's good about
Oh,
each idea, shake hands, and compromise. At least that's the way that I see it. And
Hmm.
to wrap this up, like, since it's getting a little bit long, I'd say we need to understand, I respect pretty much anybody. In terms of your political beliefs, I don't care. If you're a good person, you're a good person. And, we ought to understand each other's opinions, respect them, unless, of
my
course,
bad.
that person is saying, you shouldn't exist. Like, there are people on the alt right who say I shouldn't exist as a person, that I'm an abomination, which, I'm going to have my problems with that. But, the fact is, we should ideally, if people are peaceful, we should respect their viewpoints and they should respect mine. That's just how I
Sounds
see it.
good to me.
That's completely fair.
Yeah.
Indeed.
That should be the default of Americans, but unfortunately, that's a utopia for Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we're
Yeah.
getting much closer to a point where, like, because remember, there are countries where you can be arrested for quote unquote hate speech, such
That's
as,
true,
and
yes.
Canada's one of those countries, that utopia. One of the, the UK is one of those countries. It just happened a couple weeks ago with a 12-year-old kid that said something to a soccer player. So, there is quite a few problems when we start to take away our free speech. Even
Mhm.
And a couple
even if
years.
even if we
Go ahead.
completely
Yeah.
disagree with the person, we got to make sure that we agree that they have the right to say that.
The way that I see it, for example, in Germany, I'm sure a lot of people know this, that in Germany the Nazi flag is banned. And although even there, you're permitted to be a bad person, you're permitted to be a Nazi, you just can't fly the flag. That's one of the things. I think we as society should come up with a good system where everybody should be able to speak, but we ought to be able to kind of keep a lid on what we consider a threat to, society in general.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, Joe, would you
Yeah.
would you like to say something about cancel culture? Because I know that this was something that you were very excited to get into.
um, well, here's the premise I'm about to set. I think cancel culture can go easily too far. I think it's ultimately absolutely pathological and a destruction of free speech. So I think you guys now understand my stance on cancel culture. Um, but to be more
It's
specific,
totalitarianism.
I'd say so,
Hmm.
yeah. Now, here's the thing. I understand. Now, there's an argument that's pro cancel culture that I've heard sometimes. And what that says is, you know, shouldn't a group of people, that if a group of people don't want a, let's say, let's use a music artist as an example, like a rapper or a pop artist or some musical artist who was, told 10, it's been, leaked that 10 years ago he or she said like, a gay slur or something, or, some kind of offensive term, or appeared to be saying something offensive.
That just reminded me of
That
my favorite video of Joe Biden. Max knows exactly what that video is.
Yeah.
yes, and the pro cancel culture movement, one of the arguments is, if we as a group of people, we should be able to decide whether this artist shall be recognized with the recognition he or she has. But the way I look at it is, what about the people who actually want to listen to that artist? What about the people that actually like that artist and aren't for that actually want to listen. Ben Shapiro is an example of this is, he's not a musical artist by any means. Well, actually, he can play the violin, but anyway,
That's
he's a
neither here or there.
yeah, he's a mainly obviously, if obviously you guys both know who he is,
I
but for
think I
anybody
think
who
almost
Yeah.
everyone knows who Ben Shapiro is at this point.
yeah, but just to sum it up, he's a political commentator, and he's a part of the Daily Wire conservative, podcast, or kind of
Outlet.
like a radio show. And a few years ago, I think it was the University of Berkeley, but you guys, anybody could correct me if I'm wrong on that. And it's probably been multiple universities, but he's wanted to speak on college campuses, and there were groups of protesters that wanted to shut him down, saying that we do not want Ben Shapiro to speak, that he has no right to speak, which of course is not true, because we have the First Amendment in the United States, and anybody who knows a shed of what Ben Shapiro has said knows that what he says is not hateful or threatening in any way. And people don't realize, what about the people who want to listen to him? Don't they have a right to see Ben Shapiro at that campus and listen to him if they want to? And doesn't he have a right under the First Amendment to go to the college campus and speak? And if you don't want to listen to him, if you really just absolutely hate the guy, then don't go to where he's speaking. Don't go there.
Yeah.
You know?
I know.
And I think that's a manifestation. Well, not a manifestation. I think that's a blunt example of cancel culture, and just shows you how far it can go, because part of cancel culture is,
Removing
in
the
my
First
view,
Amendment.
right,
Mm.
you have to take a piece out of the First Amendment, at least a little bit, in order to engage in cancel culture. Because by engaging in cancel culture, by being pro cancel culture, you are for the, banning of certain artists or certain TV shows or certain brands, whatever it may be. I mean, especially this year, you know, cancel culture has expanded, to almost everything. A TV show, it's gotten to the point where even TV shows are being called to be canceled just because because they don't have enough black representation or something.
Or due to the fact that a dog is wearing a police uniform.
Yeah, that's probably the most ridiculous example, if any of
I
you haven't
loved
heard of
Paw
that.
Patrol, and that is a very heartbreaking thing. I just want to put that out there.
Yes, I
I loved
agree.
Chase. I loved Chase a lot, but of course they have
Uh,
to. All good things must come to an end.
And
Uh,
another thing, here's a more notable example. Um, the red. So maybe you guys could also give your opinions on this about the Redskins, the football
The
team,
football
NFL
team
football team, yeah, changing their name, and so far
changing
it's
their
now,
name to the football
yeah,
team.
so far it's the football team, the Washington football team.
Legit, that's what they're going to be called throughout the season. By the way, Max, that they're going to
yeah.
be called the Washington Football Team.
Now
Okay,
here's the
Like
thing.
I wish I was making that up, but I'm not.
Now, for the people who wanted to change, who called for this change and how they agreed to the changing of this name and all that. Now, there haven't been, as far as I'm concerned, and anybody could correct me on this, there haven't been any polls done this year about to Native Americans as to whether they find this name offensive or not. But 4 years ago, when the debate was still kind of lingering as to whether or not this football name should be changed,
Most of them said no.
90%, and this is according to the Washington Post, I believe, 90% of Native Americans did not find the name offensive. And in fact, there was some of them in that majority of Native Americans who said
That
that they
took pride in it.
appreciate the name.
Yeah, that took pride in it because there's
Yeah,
another TikToker. His name is the Not Thought, which is a funny name,
the
but
not thought.
he's a Native American, and he talked about it, and he said that the name and the team does exactly what they've been fighting to do: preserve the culture and show it to the world, preserve
Right.
what Native Americans were. And he said the name Redskins, sure, you can say that it's insensitive, and if you want to fix it, but don't completely remove anything that has to do with Native Americans because you're fighting against what you're fighting for.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's what's I'd like to know, what the alternative is gonna, well,
Well,
right now it's the American football team, but why can't we, like, okay, so let's say that, they're concerned about the name. They find, these group of people that signed a petition, which, by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's actually no evidence that the petition that was signed to call for the changing of this name was primarily in any way Native Americans or even minorities that were calling for this name change. So
Yeah.
the people that were actually calling for this name change weren't even the ones that would hypothetically be um, directly affected by this name.
We'll
Yeah.
So
we'll get into white girls in a second.
You mind if I like cut into the whole Washington
yeah, of
Redskins
course, yeah.
Yeah,
thing and give my take?
go ahead.
Like the way I see this, we have to remember the reason why the name was changed was actually because the team's biggest like contributors, financial contributors, said if you guys don't change the name, we're gonna pull out your money, and that
Oh,
was the reason for the name change. It wasn't about the Native Americans. It was about money, plain and simple,
wow.
money.
Well, that makes it even worse then.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember though that the debate for it's been a long time. I mean, it's been a long time coming that we all knew that at some point the name was going to change. And now, from what I hear, they're changing it to the Red Wolves, which is actually not that bad of a team name. So, the way I see it, if they wanted to change the name, the team themselves, I mean, that's all fine and dandy. I mean, I could really care less what the team decides to do with their own name. But like I said, it is true that a good deal of Native Americans did not care about the name. And here's what I say: if they wanted to change the name like the team, that's fine. If they didn't, I would have been fine with that too. And I'm sure this will tie into the whole Noah's woke white girls argument. So I'm
Oh
just going to
god.
end it there.
Mm. Oh dear God. So before I get into that, I just want to say that there is ways that it can be done right. And would you say that the team name Chicago Blackhawks, which does tie into Native Americans because there was tribes and it was based off of Chief Blackhawk, um, wouldn't you say that that's a team done right? That like the team is actually preserving the culture at that point when they
I
name it
mean,
the Blackhawks?
sure, sure,
I mean, I'm
no,
not.
That's
yes.
what native. That's what the Not Thought said. He said that
Oh,
if you
okay.
change it to like a tribe name, then that's not insensitive at all. That's exactly what we are fighting for.
Yeah, especially if it's like, if it's a noted, like, historically factual tribe name, that's much different than a name that's more
A slur.
spread, I guess. That's kind of manifested into the mainstream, but is not really known to be an actual fact as to whether or not it was called a tribe name. But if the Blackhawks really was a tribe name and the Native Americans appreciate it, then I say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Hmm.
the Blackhawks are, and plus the Blackhawks are also a very well respected team within the NHL, and people are still fighting for the name to be changed on the Blackhawks.
Really.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I wonder if
Even
there
though
was
I
a
don't
poll
know a
done
single
for that.
Native American that has a problem with it. Obviously there
Hmm.
I,
are.
I'm
Obviously there are, but it's such a small minority.
Hmm.
but
Well,
all right, well, yeah, what's this woke white girl thing you wanted to talk about?
exactly.
Oh boy. Okay,
You
so
mind if do you mind if I start this one off?
yeah, go ahead.
I
Well, you
mean,
do. Oh, okay.
I do
yeah.
mind, so go ahead.
You just
I'm
said
just
you do
kidding.
mind.
Okay,
I'm just
okay.
saying obviously go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll make it quick.
Don't get too deep into my words here.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah,
cancel
yeah,
me
yeah.
at some point.
All right, all right. Well, what I was gonna say in terms of this situation, as a mixed race person, let me say this: I have a very deep qualm, and I kind of hate woke white girls because, let me be honest, they're speaking for me when half of the time they don't even know what I want. They're speaking for minorities who often don't want what they want. And it's the same thing. They tend to go around, post a bunch of stuff that is supposed to be, against them, and then they yell at minorities who disagree with them, they yell at white people who disagree with them, they yell at anybody who disagrees with them. And I think, this whole idea where woke white girls think they're so great and they're helping out minorities in society, they got to understand that, if they're trying to affect change, listen to the people who you're trying to help out. Don't like silence them and do your own thing.
Exactly. And I'm just I understand you guys call the term woke white girls, and perhaps throughout social media, it's definitely much more represented by, shall I say, white female Homo sapiens. But I think
White female
I think
Homo sapiens.
also, even though it may not be as common, there are a plethora of other like of white guys or other or just other people besides white girls that also are being sunk into this woke culture and cancel culture. And I understand that like with the people like
Joe
I'd
Rogue,
assume that
the definition of simp.
there's that, and the fact that I was just gonna say that I'd assume that all three of us follow lots of people, and we see that over lots of Instagram stories, and I think that um I don't know what was I gonna say that there are other people besides Waikos who are also being sunk into the woke culture. I think that we, as like I mean, I'm technically an adult, but as teenagers, as we all are, we all we kind of see from on a day-to-day basis, assuming you guys go on Instagram at least once a day or once every couple days. I'm assuming you do. This is what we see, and this is what we're being shown because of the people we do follow. But I do understand. I definitely understand though where you guys, what you guys are saying because,
Oh,
I
and
guess I
you gotta love the arguments that they make. You disagree with them, they'll either
yeah.
write a fairy comment at you or they'll say no with a heart emoji.
Yeah.
No with a
There's
heart
no.
emoji. So, so it's like they're trying to be virtuous but dismissive at the same time. So it's like I'm just going to dismiss you, but I'm going to put a heart next to it to make it look as though I'm being half nice and decent so that you can't fire back at me. It's like what the hell is that?
And okay, so I have a whole ass conversation that I had with this girl. I forget where she's from, but she's a part of this group. Max knows. I was talking to him while the whole conversation was going down. It was
Oh no.
hilarious. But before I talk about the conversation, let me say this. If you want to, so there's some people that kind of don't understand what virtue signaling is.
Yeah.
And if you want an idea on what virtue signaling is, the exact definition of it is probably on your social media with what so many of these woke white girls are doing.
Right, because people are encouraging it. They're not just saying, they're not just virtual signaling. They're bluntly saying you should indeed be virtue signaling. People are being blunt and literally saying you should be dismissive of someone's opinion because if what they're saying is in any way disagreeable with what you're saying, then you are immediately some kind of deplorable person.
Because here's what they think. They think that it's better to fake it and quote unquote agree than it is to disagree and be honest, which is
Yeah.
absolutely
Right.
awful, and that's another problem that ties into cancel culture. Also,
And and the woke
I could
culture, of
tell Max is
course.
printing something.
Yeah, it was just a printer update that completed.
Okay. So, um, jeez.
Why do
Okay.
you guys? I have a question for you. Maybe you guys can answer this. Why do you think that it's because you guys clearly think as we clearly both seem to be observing that the with regard to the demographics of the woke culture, why is it that so many Caucasian females or and even just white people in general are the main proponents of woke and cancel culture? Why is that? Why do you guys think that is?
I think personally, it's
Yeah.
probably because of societal pressure. If I'm honest, a lot of people have been, pushed over the years where if you're a white person and you don't do this or that, it automatically makes you racist. I think that's why people are doing it. Some
Hmm.
people truly believe, what they post, and the people that do truly believe it, respect to you. But, the people who do it just to appear that they're not racist, you're wasting your time. That's what I have to say.
You're wasting your potential intellect that you may be willing to, you know, be to create. People Why is it, why do people want to, it's like this is an example of how ignorance is so bliss, that if you're ignorant about certain topics and you're not logical in your arguments, you don't have much evidence to back it up, and you're saying very, very dogmatic and uncompromised statements. Why would a person want to, it's, I think the reason, I mean, I'm kind of answering my own question. I was going to ask, why do people do this? And I think that people find it easier to do it because I think that to be logical, to be data
It gets
driven, and
them
to be
free.
right, free,
They're free of cancel culture.
right, and to be intellectual in any way, that's a burden on your mind. And I'm sure we can all relate to this. It's a burden to see the other side. It's a burden to think outside the box. It's a burden to empathize with the other side.
But one problem you got to realize, there is like if you're on the left, there is you have no protection from cancel culture. You're screwed.
Exactly.
Because here's why. If you're if you're
Yeah.
if you're on the right and people are trying to cancel you, you're going to have defense then. So
Yeah.
That's
that's why
interesting. Yeah.
it becomes a war, which on its own is a bad thing. We should not be having wars between two groups of people within the United States. Come on, why are we having civil wars over?
That's called tribalism, and it's been happening since the dawn of time, and it must be stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's starting to get to this point where it's even going to start happening with businesses like Goya, because now all of a sudden Republicans are just like, since the owner of Goya praised Trump, all of a sudden all the Republicans are wanting to buy Goya and all the Democrats are wanting to boycott it. So now
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're going to look to other companies, and now there's going to be left-leaning companies and right-leaning companies, just like what happened with the
Yeah.
news. And that's such a huge problem with our society, that we're becoming that split up, that
Yeah.
businesses are now forced to choose a side.
Could I tie into this real quick?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I'd say, the thing about, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Where were we again?
I was talking about how businesses are becoming left-leaning and right-leaning.
Yeah, I had a really good argument in this head, and then I
Oh
forgot
no,
about it
I
right
hate when that
before.
happens.
Oh God. Let me think
We're
for
also
10
talking about
seconds.
tribalism.
10
Tribalism,
seconds. 10 seconds.
how through the dawn of time, as I dramatically said, we've
Yeah,
always,
yeah. I recall. The thing about people and companies, like the thing is, companies always do what they think is best for their company, but we shouldn't be boycotting other. Oh, now I remember my argument. There was a thing that I saw that said, if you don't post about BLM, you are not reacting to racism, which is inherently racist.
Oh my god.
And
inherently
I
racist.
yes, and I said that's just total bullshit right there. That you can't we can't just say that. We don't want to start wars. It's one of the things in human nature. We don't want to fight each other. It's a lot of us are scared of conflict. And if you post something about BLM, chances are you might receive a critical response. Or let's say you're born into a family with different political views and your parents see it, you might be in trouble. Like Kellyanne Conway's daughter. I think her name is Claudia. I forget. But yeah, that's her daughter is left wing, mother is very right wing, and arguments. So we have to realize not everyone can safely repost stuff. Not everybody wants to, and we should be able to respect that. And to boycott people and companies because they have their CEOs or the people have different political opinions is just kind of stupid, if you ask me, really.
And it goes back to when we were talking about cancel culture in a way.
Yeah.
Boycotting is, another blunt example of the general um term of cancel culture, the general that generality of cancel culture, because cancel
And
culture has a lot of branches. It has a lot of
yeah, and
A lot of
twigs,
different activities you can take part in
yeah,
to
right.
help
Has
and
a lots
help with
of
the cause.
I know
lots of
people are
different variables.
I
Sorry.
know people are now that LEM is a human rights organization and not a political thing, but Did you see the
Bullshit.
post? Did you see the post that they put out with the numbers? That they literally
The
just
one that I put on my story.
yeah, the one they literally just handed the alt right a talking point. They just gave it to them. They were like, "Here you go."
They literally just put it out there and said, "All right, here you go. Here's us proving our own point wrong, guys. We wanted some. We had too many people agreeing with us because they felt like they had to, and now you guys just made it so that you guys have a point against us now. We're so generous, aren't we?"
Yeah, they literally gave evidence numbers to the alt right to back up their
Not even to the
claims.
alt right, to anybody, to basically anyone that disagrees with Black Lives Matter,
Yeah, they
anyone that disagrees with the premise of it, or has the idea that that it's not just an issue of, oh, they're peaceful, that like there's no good way to put
yeah,
this,
this
but
was
that they just gave out numbers, and every single number that they put out is against their own cause. Every single
I
number.
know,
they
and and as you pointed out on your story, like how, like if we want to get more specific here, and like the post itself, like just for anybody listening to this, the post itself that BLM posted was, um, it's a post that's showing statistics of white versus black crime, and it says, "Stop believing in stereotypes that are told about black people in America." And here's an example: so murder, 44.1% white, 53.3% black. Now you may be thinking to yourself, "Oh yes, I've been taught a lie. They must not commit as much, statistically in America." Black men must not commit as much homicide as white men
Can,
do, as I thought.
can I can
But
I say the
to
kicker? Can I say
13%
the
of the
kicker?
population. Yeah, yeah.
He said the kicker.
Sorry, sorry. I stole
The
it.
kicker is that 13% of the population, I think it's like 13.4 to get really specific, of the percent of the population is black.
And
Every single number you see on this post, the lowest one is 14.8, which is still disproportionately high.
yeah, they really shot themselves in the foot here. Really, BLM took a gun and shot themselves in the foot. It with I don't know what kind of bullet is the most penetrating, because we have to remember, ideally in a perfect world, crime wouldn't be pinned on
existing.
races,
Yeah,
but
or
we live in a world where crime is pointed out based on race, and it turns out that these guys, the BLM, really shot themselves in the foot here. They gave a talking
Keep
point to anyone who disagrees with them.
keep in mind this is not the actual Black Lives Matters page. It's a, you could say, fan page.
Mm.
Um
all
but
right.
but
And another thing,
it's
I
still
just want to,
funny enough.
if you guys don't mind me saying, I just want to, give me my opinion on, Black Lives Matter and the ramifications of that. I think you could still, like, as you could still, you know, everybody, anybody with any sense should agree with the statement logically that just the statement in and of itself, logically,
Hmm.
Black Lives Matter is true, and we should all stand for it. Anybody with any sense should, and again, I didn't say the organization, but the statement itself, anybody should be able, anybody with any sense of any kind of morality would
Any
agree with that,
humanity, yes.
and humanity,
Yeah.
yes. But I think it's really catastrophic, really pathological when people say that if you disagree with certain individual concepts that BLM might support, like maybe
Oh, jeez.
systemic racism, that's a disagreeable talking point amongst conservatives and liberals, because the question is, to what degree is racism actually systemic in today's society, right? That's a disagreeable talking point, and we can have a nice civil intellectual discussion on that. But people post stuff saying that even if you don't agree with every
Un
single concept that comes from
unfold.
BLM and organizations such like that, then you are doing a disservice to black people. You are just utterly racist and bigoted.
Yeah, that's what I read on
Yeah.
somebody's story. So,
Can
Yeah, right, as you
can
pointed out. Yeah.
can I tell a quick story?
Of
It's
course.
from the Dear MPS episode, but
Yeah.
I'll do a quick refresher. Um, I I made a statement how, on the death of Emmett Till, that there's a video on Emmett Till in class which we all watched freshman year, And
Yes.
one particular class said, "Hey, let's see the body. Let's see the body." When class was ending, and a mixed race woman or girl in the class took that as hateful, microaggressions, all that type of stuff. And I said, I don't know, I can't say for sure if the intent was hateful or racist in any kind of way. It could be, it could not be. But, as it stands, there's no way that we can tell. And that's something that we have to acknowledge when we live in a system of guilty until proven, innocent until proven
Oh,
guilty.
thank
And
God.
that's such yeah. We we got to make sure we're fighting for innocent until proven guilty, because you could always be wrong and you could still ruin someone's life, even if the case is, completely, you know, awful. The case is not even true at all, but
Right.
their lives can still be ruined in that way. And that's what and then all of a sudden this girl went into my DMs and said, "You're what you're doing is called racial gaslighting, and
Well, what did you even
what you're
do
doing is
though?
racist."
What did you even do? Like, I'm.
I argued for innocent until
Oh,
proven
right.
guilty.
Yeah, that's what it.
And
Oh,
I
okay.
got told that I'm racially gaslighting and that I'm racist.
Look,
Just because, Jesus
as
God.
And
as
that
my,
and that and that same girl said that I don't understand racism even though I'm Jewish, which is its own crazy ass thing.
well,
Right.
I what I said in the last episode, I'll just make a quick refresher here. I stated that based on Jewish people, yes, they do suffer a lot of discrimination, and I said that had
We're
to
the
do
most
with
hated group
race.
in America. We're
But
statistically proven we are the most hated group in America.
the amendment that I wanted to make to my argument was the fact that it is true that Jews were persecuted per se because they were seen as not white. That's the amendment that I wanted to make.
Or the Aryan race.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
Nazis literally said that Jews were not white. So
Hmm.
that's my amendment. That's what I wanted to say, because some people might have taken my words out of context and said, "Oh my goodness, you're accusing this and that," and
Oh God.
Yeah, you see, you shouldn't really have to do that.
I was
yeah,
just
I
about to
That's
say that. It's like, think about, especially us three. Think about, like, I myself don't post on my story, as you both probably know. Like, I just don't post. But we have to be just so careful with the language we use. Like, just we have to be so specific and so careful with every word we say, so it's not taken out of context and not taken the wrong way. You know,
hmm
yeah.
it's really it's a very, very, very superfluous burden that we shouldn't be able to be doing. But hey, this is the society we're living in right now. So
For me, I don't live too much in fear because I know that my points are a very centrist view. Or
that's
not
true. Yeah.
centrist, but well, centrist is such a slur at this
Oh,
point. But
It's a
it's such a
racial
moderate
slur.
view. It's such a like my views are moderate views. So, it's if and I know that the real people will, because I do have people that, slide up on my story all the time, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Snapchat, and they'll talk with me, they'll have conversations with me, and we'll be able to have really good conversations and dialogues about the topic at hand. And then there's other people, like I said, when I said that Trump isn't, when I made the post that said Trump isn't racist, all of a sudden I get so many people blocking me, which I just, the immaturity of that is just so sad.
I know, it's like, if they disagree with that premise, why can't they talk about it with you?
yeah.
Like, why are
I
they?
No, I made a TikTok the other day, and I said, and here I'll even pull it up on my phone so you guys can hear what I said word for word. Oh, great.
Oh,
well,
Okay, so
no,
before you play
after.
the
so
Oh,
TikTok, yeah, but before you play the TikTok, let me just say this. I remember, just to put it out there, the idea that Trump isn't racist is something that I have strong disagreements with. But again, you didn't see me attacking Noah for it. In fact, we had a pretty civil discussion and we agreed to disagree. So,
mhm. And okay,
yeah.
so here's what I said. Okay, can I just be real with y'all for a second? You see, I see people posting stuff to their stories all the time on Instagram. they make these reposts, they post things on their story that other people posted. Now, if you're going to repost stuff onto your story and you're not willing to back it up in a conversation, or you're not really ready to have a conversation about it, about what you posted on your story, you're not ready to talk about politics yet. And you shouldn't be posting it on your story in the first place if you're not ready to have any kind of discussion about it, or you're willing to back it up in any sort of way. You putting anything on your story, any kind of public domain on your name, means that you're ready to talk about it. And if you're not ready to talk about it, then you shouldn't be putting that on your story in the first place. I think it's common sense, and this goes both ways. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican and posting stuff on your story. You better be willing to back it up. That was, the TikTok that I made, and that's something that I stand by, because if I do see something that I disagree with on your story, I don't care who you are, and I disagree with it enough, I'm going to slide up and I'm going to try to have a conversation with you about it to see
A civil
why you're.
conversation.
Mm-hmm. I'm very civil with my conversations.
Good.
Like you guys know.
Yeah.
Any discussion that I have, I'm very civil about it, and that leads me to what I want to say. In terms of a conversation that I had with this girl, I believe she's from Wallingford, and she, whew, her view, yeah, she's from Wallingford, and oh my god, she was a part of the woke white group, and okay, you ready?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
Sure.
So
I mean, I don't know if I am, but
so she made a post that said that was okay. So you guys know the Trump shirt that has an eagle on top of an American flag.
Yes.
That's
yes.
in a circle.
Yeah.
Had very
And then people
close...
said, "What?"
Yeah, I was gonna say that one was criticized for having very close ties to, the Nazi eagle. So,
Which the model UN uses, and the Freemasons use, and the Romans used. I'm sure they're all fascists and all
Yeah,
that
they're
kind of
all
stuff.
well, the
just
model UN are very fascist. Let me just say that.
They're extraordinarily, yeah. I haven't even been a member of there, and I can already tell they're fascist.
I mean, I've been a Model UN member for almost 4 years now. Trust me, they're very fascistic.
Oh no.
Well, I'm not talking about Model UN. I'm talking about UN itself.
Right.
But at that, I said that, and I said that in response to it, and she says, "If you have such a problem with what I repost, unfollow me. It's not that hard." And I'm like, I'm trying to have a discussion about something that I disagree with on your story, and you're so unable to back up what you say that you're telling me to unfollow you.
I feel like people just want the easy way out. They want to have their message heard, and they want it to be completely axiomatic, unquestionable, completely dogmatized, and uncompromised.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I said this. No, it's a simple disagreement and a cause for discussion. If you post something, you should be able to have a discussion about it if someone disagrees. Otherwise, you're blindly making statements. And okay, so I think what I've said so far is agreeable, right?
Yep.
You guys ready to hear her response to what I said?
I know what it is. Noah told me.
Max knows what it is, but Joe, you're gonna love this.
Oh no.
She says, "No, if I post something, it's for the people who agree with me, not for you to disagree and discuss.
All right, well,
I'm not going to change your... Hold on. I'm not going to change your views, and you're not going to change mine. These discussions are pointless and a waste of my damn time."
All right, well, at least she's honest. That's all I have
Well,
to say. At least she's damn
I
honest.
thought, when I heard that at first, I thought it was the stupidest argument I had heard in a very, very long time. Personally. I mean...
God, it's like you're admitting at that point that you can't back up what you're saying.
Well, hey, at least she admits it, for God's sake. Many people are very, I'd say, cowardice is the right word, too.
Very...
admit that. And even if you admit that, grow, for God's sake. Grow mentally, grow intellectually.
Be more mature. Like,
why does
Jesus.
everybody want the easy way out?
You're not mature enough to talk about politics if this is how you're going to respond to someone that disagrees with you. It's that simple. I have people that disagree with what I put on my story, and if they disagree with me, I'll have a conversation with them, and maybe we'll agree to disagree. Maybe we'll change each other's views. Who knows? But that's what we should be doing. You gotta go into politics with an open mind. Like you
Well,
cannot be so stuck
see,
on your views and not thinking that you're wrong
here's the
in any
problem
way.
with that. You say the word politics, right? Which I agree with what you just said. But there's another thing that people are going against is that this idea that what they're saying is political, right? And I don't know if
Oh
you
my
guys have
god.
seen this, but
Yeah.
there's been lots of stories of people saying, you know,
This
doing
isn't
this
political,
isn't a
but
political issue. You're like recognizing blacks' rights to live or whatever, or isn't a
th- this
political
isn't
issue,
political, but support the organization that is putting money directly into the pockets of Democrats. Sure.
right?
Well,
We'll go with that.
I may have my disagreements with that statement, but we're going to save that for later. And I think
Eh,
I already talked about it too. So, we've been there,
Yeah.
done that.
yeah, but here's what I said back. The point of discussion is to find a compromise, or if nothing else, agree to disagree. But if you're simply posting stuff on your story and have zero tolerance for anyone disagreeing, then that's just being hard and closed viewed on opinions. The way that we grow and evolve as people and society is by taking outside view, and the only way we get legislation through in the United States is through conversation and compromise. If you can't handle someone disagreeing with you, you shouldn't be posting it in the first place because you're not ready for conversations on that topic yet.
Indeed.
Yep.
And she goes, what possible compromise is there? Everything I post is literally equality for all.
Exactly. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Um, and what's best with our country. And I'm not going to waste my discussing and quote unquote compromising with someone who thinks the way you do. And you're right. I do have a closed view on opinions because I know what's fucking right and what's wrong, and lose the stop posting if you're not ready to discuss bullshit. I'm gonna post whatever the fuck I want, and I really don't want to discuss or talk to ignorant people like you.
Wow.
Heart
Okay.
heart
Who's the
emoji
ignorant one?
XOXO. This conversation is over because I'm not wasting my time arguing once again. If you don't like the post in sparkling emojis, unfollow.
See, the people are just so cowardice. They just don't want to hear what someone like you, even me and Max wants to say. They just are so cowardice, and they are so willing to denounce you for simply, and you might not even be fully disagreeing with everything you say. You're just daring to be, I mean, sometimes you are, but you're just daring to be skeptical and critical of it. There's a difference between disagreeing with the entirety of someone's ideology and every aspect of it than being skeptical of and critical of certain individual concepts of that ideology. It's like it's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what much else to say, but we're probably gonna be ending this soon if I'm not wrong. And I'd just like to put something out there as maybe perhaps a last point of mine, that I see these people now. You guys, you may agree or disagree with me, but I see part of the radical leftist movement as a neo-Marxist movement,
Mm.
and I feel that I definitely I myself need to do more research on Karl Marx and the history of communism, but I feel that many of the ideas, they want equality of outcome, right? There's a difference between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. In my
Fair
view,
point.
right, anybody with any sense should agree with equality of outcome. If you have any sense of morality, you probably would have to agree with equality of outcome, right? I mean, well, my bad, equality of opportunity. But
Yeah.
but what they're arguing for is
He
equality
said
of
equality
outcome.
of opportunity, not outcome. Okay.
Exactly. And
Get that in your mind if you're watching this right now and you're about to
yes,
cancel him.
yes, my bad. But for equality of outcome, that's one of the doctrines of Karl Marx, is that general idea of equality of outcome. The idea that even if the game is fair, that the outcome of the game should be pretty much the same across all ethnic groups, all sexual orientations, you name it, etc., whatever. And here's the thing that in which that logically just does not bear out. If you're playing a sports game, and Noah Golden, you definitely know this very well, there's always going to be a winner. There's always
Mhm.
going to be a winner. Only one team can win the game. That doesn't mean that, but the rules are set. the rules apply to all the teams that are playing the game, but only one team
Listen. We're
will
trying to play.
win.
We're trying to play hockey while they're trying to play soccer, where you can draw.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like in every sport, unless there is a challenge, unless there is some problem in the corruption of, whatever the league or whatever, maybe MLB, NBA, hockey, whatever, the game, the rules apply to everybody. The rules are fair. And if you lose, you can't go whining about it because there's only going to be one winner.
Hmm.
And that's
Mhm.
how I would connect that to the the equality of
We
outcome doctrine.
I'd say, well, I'm not gonna like add on to this. I would say because we're gonna end soon. Can we go on to Portland soon?
hmm
Oh,
I
that's
do just want to
right.
say, for you, Joe, we did talk about this in our conversation about privilege. That at the end of the day, we're all our own individual people, and
Exactly.
Yes, and
we each have our own privileges, and that's why we cannot make blanket statements that white privilege, male privilege, tall privilege, Christian privilege.
thin
No, we can't.
privilege.
Listen,
Yeah,
we can't go around making those kinds of blanket statements because we're all our own people with all of our own advantages and disadvantages. And at
exactly.
the end of the day, we got to make sure that we understand that we got to understand that about ourselves. We cannot start villainizing people for having certain advantages because that's just unfair to someone because they don't quite have that much control over it.
Hmm.
Agreed.
And so Max, would you like to start us off with Portland?
All
Yeah,
right. So
there
I
we go.
suppose for the closing aspect of the podcast, we're gonna be entering Portland. So of course, I'm sure everybody's heard that Portland has been in a pretty bad state. You've had quite a bit of protests, which have escalated into riots, and
No,
arguably,
no riots at all. It's all peaceful. It's all
well,
peaceful protests.
Yeah, it's all.
All peaceful.
I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is Trump ordered the National Guard in there, or federal forces to go in and calm it down, quell it, and it's been pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. There's been a lot of backlash. The people of Portland, their mayor, and the governor want federal forces the hell out of there as soon as possible. Considering some people, some of those forces, which are unnamed, have just been picking people up and putting them in vans and driving off to police facilities, and a lot of people, including some people are equating this to a Gestapo kind of thing in the Nazis. Some people are saying it's a very Stasi way of doing things, like in East Germany and the communist secret police. And a
I
lot
don't
of
know
people.
I don't know when you're rioting. I think there is
Oh,
kind
I
of
mean, well, we'll get
there's
into
kind of room for that.
we'll get into that in a minute. The point is, a lot of people are saying, "Is this the right move? Are we really
Right.
is it correct to send federal forces in and just pick people up off the street?" And that's how we'll start it. So I'll delegate it to somebody, Joe, Noah, whoever.
Noah, you
Um,
could start. Yeah.
I I think I would like to hear what anyone else would like to not like I like hear me out when I say this. If you disagree with it so much, tell me what your plan would be to stop all this violence. What would you do if you were in the president's spot and one of the biggest cities in the country is now getting overrun by this group of people that are rioting and burning down neighborhoods within the city? What would you do is my question to you if you disagree with it so much. Tell me what your plan would be. I'm not saying that you would do the same thing, but I'm genuinely interested to hear what you think and what you think would work because this is one way that could make this work
I mean,
if
I
it gets to this point of such violence.
I
I mean,
mean,
if I were, oh, go ahead, Max. You're gonna talk.
well, I'll be quick. I'd say because I staunchly disagree with this. I have always been a strong proponent of federalism. States should have control over their own territories, and the federal government should ideally keep a distance from states. And look, I understand that people, are scared the federal government went in to try and quell it. But when you pick people up off the streets, we have to ask how constitutional that is. We have to ask, since when
Yeah.
does the federal government have the authority to send in troops to pick people up and quell violence with force?
Since
After
we
all,
established martial law.
well, in a perfect world, we would have the local state government and the local state police dealing with this, not the federal forces. That's my real, qualm
Agreed,
with this.
but the government of Oregon wasn't going to. You
Well,
know that.
with in terms of the federal
And the mayor
troops,
especially wasn't going to do anything.
well, in terms of the federal troops, if I were the president of the United States, I know, at least I think I know what I would do with this. I would say if people were rioting, I would say, why is the group rioting? Why? Is there a reason? Is there some kind of problem in Portland that is causing this? And get on my desk what the problem is. I'll go and visit the city personally myself and
And get
talk to
shot.
the leader. Even if I am gonna be assassinated, even if I'm gonna try, like, if somebody's gonna try and assassinate me, I will do it because I would want to listen to whoever the leader is
I
and
I
get his
pers
point.
yeah. Sorry for interrupting if I did, but I would personally probably I agree mostly with what Max is saying. Um,
Hmm.
and I think if I were in the president's shoes, because there's been lots of debate about, is this the right thing for him to do? And there's little evidence to show that he actually, you guys, maybe you have evidence to go against this, but that President Trump didn't actually, he didn't ask permission. Now, I know because of the Insurrection Act that Trump may be technically able to do this without the government's permission, but the governor's, excuse me, permission, but he didn't call the governor beforehand, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. And I think that if I were in the president's shoes, I would have called the governor beforehand saying, look, your city, you're going through lots of, destruction right now. Do you want me to send troops? And if he says no, I would advise him strongly to be, give a
Yeah,
more prominent police force in his own city.
yeah, and
That's fair. That's
the
fair.
thing, the
Yeah.
real qualm that I had with this was that the president stated clear and openly his reason for sending troops in was very simple. He said that Portland, because it's run by a Democratic mayor and a Democratic, government, that they're allowing the radical left and Antifa, you got to pin it on somebody. And, they blamed Antifa, even though Antifa is not a centralized group. It's a bunch of decentralized little militias that barely have the capability to mobilize a national or even a state or a city uprising, let alone. The way I see it, we shouldn't be blaming one radical left group. Instead, we should be able to, instead of blaming people and picking sides, unify. Say, let's work together to solve this problem.
Agreed, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I can see whoa, okay, I can see both sides of this here, but for me personally, I'm kind of on the side of like, I think that it is a correct move to advise, as Joe said, to advise National Guard sent in. That's just my opinion on it, just due to the fact that, like, what else are you going to do? There's not much else you could do when it gets to this point of violence.
Well, certainly we all have our, agreements, disagreements on this. Uh, the way I see it, though, we have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Why are we, utilizing, why are we so divided? Why are we utilizing division as an excuse to, get into these little fights like, let's fight Antifa? One of the core premises of Trump's 2020 campaign is to, quote, defeat Antifa. But we have to ask ourselves, why are we rallying around division? Shouldn't he be like saying, unite to do this or do that instead of defeat Antifa? But I'd understand if it were a terrorist group like ISIS And I know they want to designate Antifa a terrorist group, but we're talking about a little group of Marxists, sure, but the Marxists, these are a small, tiny group of people, barely have any weapons, barely have any arms. They've mainly been all talk, and those members that do commit violent acts have been arrested. So, how can we unify to defeat a group that's already pretty suppressed?
Right, and I think that this is just my opinion. I pretty much agree with that, and I think that Trump, by saying that, I feel like, based off how he is so now, look, I personally don't really like, I don't like the guy. I don't. I mean, just as a person, and and Mary Trump's book, by the way, which I have not read yet, but you guys have probably heard of that. How
Yes.
Trump's own niece has, who's a clinical psychologist, has talked about, how his, badness, for lack of a better word, as a childhood, or not, I don't know how tragic his trauma was, but let's just say the trauma that went went into his psyche from the beginning would manifest itself into um, him being the U.S. president, and him, saying all these very division jargon things, as you pointed out.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm of course, as it stands on this issue, I already said, I don't think it's too bad of an idea to send the National Guard in. Obviously, you should definitely call in to see, and at that point, if and at that point in the phone call, and they say no, then it kind of goes down to the quote of don't interrupt your enemies while they're making a mistake. But I hate this idea of division, and
Yeah.
you know
Sure.
it, and that's one of the great flaws in our society, that we're getting so increasingly divided, and that's what and it sucks that it takes a tragedy to unite us, like
Yeah, like
9/11.
9/11.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I couldn't have said it
And
better.
but I do just want to I with all that discussed, I do usually like to end off on a question to you guys. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Justice for Izu thing. I know Max has, probably.
Yes.
Joe, do you know who Izu is?
I don't know who he is, but it sounds familiar, like the
Did
movement.
Did you see
Yeah.
my story?
Uh, did you just post it, or a while ago?
No, I posted it a couple days ago.
Either I
Um,
missed it, or I just didn't really. I'm not sure. I might have missed it.
okay, Izu is a guy that I don't know if he was running his own business, but he was fair. But he was getting to be pretty successful. On his own. He was African American. Forget which I forget which ethnicity he is, but he was he was doing his own thing, and this evil woman, um who he said that he didn't want to have any kind of relations with her or something like that, and she goes ahead and she makes false sexual harassment allegations against him, and all of a sudden, even though he was able to prove that it's wrong, that that these allegations are fake, Izu couldn't handle the pressure of everybody turning on him for these fake allegations, and he ended up taking his own life.
Well,
And that to me kind of is a very similar feeling thing to, I think, how African Americans felt with the George Floyd dying, because it's just like, this is something that happens a lot within the USA. You see these fake allegations made all the time. And so I want to ask you guys, what do you think about this? Because to me, this is very saddening and enraging to me, because it's a real issue for guys that we have to kind of walk on eggshells a bit,
No.
because we know that
yeah.
our lives can be ended, theoretically ended so fast based on a false allegation.
Look,
I'm glad you brought that up about, like, the men issue, because before I directly, answer what I think about this specific example, let's just set the premise. Obviously, any human being would agree, but obviously, anything that results in a suicide is a tragedy. We all know that. And what's that premise is set. We obviously would agree on that. Any human would. And with before I address Izu specifically, I just want to point out with the how you said that guys, men specifically, maybe I'm interpreting it differently, but how you said that men have to specifically walk on eggshells because of false allegations. The suicide rate, I don't know the exact percentage, and I can't reference it offhand, but the um,
For
male
every
suicide.
for
Sorry,
every 3 women that commit suicide, I mean, for every one woman that commits suicide, there's 3 guys that commit suicide.
right. Oh, so it's a 33% disparity, which obviously, right. Which I was just gonna say that men, the suicide rate, in
Keep
the
in mind, attempts are different. Attempts tell the complete opposite story, but
right,
suicides
right.
themselves are
Successful.
that
I don't
statistic.
mean to
Yeah.
say successful. That's
Successful stu
probably bad, but
Successful is the correct
Yeah.
yeah,
way to say it.
it's just a weird word to
Sadly,
use with a
it's
suicide.
very,
But
you wouldn't think of successful as a
anyway,
person.
yeah, like actual,
And
suicides are most, it's very prominent among the male, the male community, which I don't know every variable, I don't know every exact reason for that, but I think it plays into that. And because, there's a really heightened culture of, as we were discussing earlier, and I know I'm repeating myself, but cancel culture and, saying certain words. And, if you're accused of something, whether it be sexual assault, which or murder, whatever, forgery, um,
whether or not it's true, your life
right,
is ending.
innocent
Yes.
until proven guilty, as Noah pointed out. Now,
Yes.
Noah, let me just ask.
We need to enforce that. I
Yes,
swear to God.
Noah, let me just ask you about Izu. So you said that I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So people were basically harassing him, saying like believing the fact that he committed what he was accused of.
Yes,
Okay, yeah,
they were going based on guilty until proven innocent, even though
right.
he was proving his
He
innocence,
was proving his innocence. First
and
of
he still wasn't believed.
And we already have the doctrine set of innocent until proven guilty, and nobody dared to think critically or to look a little deeper and understand that, gee, maybe he just is being falsely accused. And look, the statistics do show that most rape and sexual assault allegations are indeed true, but there is a percentage that, it does happen.
Even if it's 1%, that's still
Right,
thousands of lives being ruined. Even
Yes.
if the false
right, yes,
allegations rate is
yeah,
1%, which it's not, I will get into the rates. Even if it's 1%, it's still thousands of lives being ruined in the United States yearly. Not just
yeah,
that, they're saying that it's somewhere between 8 and even up to 40%. Obviously, I don't believe it's 40%, and if we want to meet in the middle and it's somewhere in the 20s range, can you even fathom the amount of lives that are getting
Yeah.
ruined?
Let me tie into this for a minute.
Because sorry for getting all energetic here, but it's something that pisses me off because it's something that I'm not seeing feminists that say that they're for equality. I'm not seeing them stick up a second for this,
Let
and that's something that pisses me off because they want to stand for us, but they're not going to stand for
yeah.
us.
Here's what I
oh,
have to say on this. I am one of the most strongest proponents of innocent until proven guilty. I mean, most people
Me
know
too.
that. I
Me
yeah,
too.
am, it's a key reason why I turned on Trump after the Zelensky affair. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in innocent until proven guilty. And we should consider that, of course, we should listen to people who have rape allegations, but we have to consider the possibility that they might be false. So before we go tarnishing someone's lives, give them the opportunity to defend themselves. And look, I have a personal way to tie into this. As a young kid, as 9, 10, 11, 12, I was always called the stalker. It was terrible. For a good deal, a good chunk of my life, girls would call me a stalker for no reason. They had no evidence to back this up. They had no way of proving it. They literally just called me the stalker because
Mhm.
they said I looked like one. That was it. And for me, it set years of, I was a hated person. In elementary school, they made fun of me publicly on Instagram. It was terrible. And it's why I have to say, it's why I believe in innocent until proven guilty. It's the core belief that we need to understand that all people are entitled to, be proven guilty before they are charged with something.
Yep.
Well, before they're convicted of something.
Yeah, but before
Yeah.
they're convicted of something. Pardon
And
me for.
Max, I just want to say I'm very, very sorry that you had to go through that. That's really sad to
Well,
hear.
And
well,
Max, just know that we love you here.
well.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you indeed. And I'm glad that that rumor died out years later, after I, started getting involved in things like politics and all of that, because they knew they couldn't back it up. They knew that it was false. They knew that they couldn't back it up, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so for innocent until proven guilty. And we need to realize as a society, in 1789, in 1945, in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, it is literally written in, not to mention in the Constitution of this country, that all persons are innocent until proven guilty. Period. I don't care what accusation, what this, that, and the other. If you are accused of something, you are innocent until proven guilty, period. No exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is a human right, a literal human right, to be treated innocent until you are proven guilty.
Sounds good. Yep.
And that's the way that it should be. And I say this, and it's saddening, and it's saddening to see, but it's an observation that I've made, that I see a lot more left-wing people believing in guilty until proven innocent than right-wing people believing that, because right-wing people are more likely to believe innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, and
That's something that I've observed.
it saddens me as a left-leaning person that so many people who profess themselves to be left-wingers don't believe in that basic human right.
And yet they want to fight for human rights.
Exactly.
That's what I say cancel culture mainly can be summarized to. Guilty until proven innocent.
Mm-hmm. It's entirely what it is.
Especially when it's individual people they're going after. Like a celebrity or something.
Mm. And that's why I think, as people who disagree with cancel culture, whenever we have dirt on someone that we don't like, we're not going to immediately say cancel them. And I do have a question here, and Max, I want to ask this one to you.
Mm.
Why hasn't Joe Biden been canceled yet for his many wise statements, especially the one that we've dug up recently?
I can tell you why right now. A lot of people, I'll be honest about this. People don't like Trump, and that's fine. I don't like Trump either. But some people hate Trump so much that they are willing to do anything in their power to remove him, which means even if they have to promote Joe Biden, which is, he's appealing to the older population, which, let's be honest, some of the boomers are a little bit racist. I've met a few of them.
A little bit.
I've met a few boomers
just
who have
just a little bit.
Yes, and by putting Biden in there, they appeal to the older, more conservative neoliberal. Well, not conservative, but the older, more neoliberal.
Like grassroots
Democrats.
liberal.
Yeah, well, I mean, the
Yeah.
younger population who were grassroots cared more for Bernie,
That's
like
true,
me.
yeah.
But the older population, they all wanted Biden, and that's the thing. We have to realize that unless we, young people, make a difference, this country is going to be run by people who are willing to put the energy in, like older people, for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. And yikes, is all I have to say, because I do have several problems with what I'm seeing from leftists, but they're fighting for a guy that literally is everything that they're fighting against.
Well, I
Like
mean,
everything that people get canceled for is stuff that he's done.
I should emphasize that liberals and leftists are two very different peoples. I mean,
I
and
agree.
and the thing
Yes,
about
Yeah, I don't know what the
definitely.
correct word would be.
I think
Should I
Liberal,
say
yeah,
liberals?
the
like
Should I?
liberals care for Joe Biden, the leftists are more Bernie AOC.
Okay, so then I'll say
and like if you
so then
want
I'll
to
say
go
liberals.
and if you want to get really technical from where the word liberal actually started, and Max and I probably learned this from AP European history class, that liberals used to believe in free speech, a free
Yes.
market with little
Yep.
government intervention in the market and economic
It
system, and
it
religious
literally has
tolerance.
liber, Liber,
Right, like
which
liberate.
yeah, liberate,
Yes.
which comes from a Latin root which means freedom.
Like
Yes.
we're all technically liberals, actually. Like we're all technically
I
liberals.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah. It,
which is
most
why I
people.
have such trouble saying it because it's just like how like what do I refer to these people as? Because obviously it's a very large group of people. Like, should I say radical left? Could I say?
Yeah, so
Well, I
radical.
mean,
Yeah.
I
Because it's not just the radical left.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, because it's more of a, it's really spread, like
It's
really
very
spread out.
spread.
Yeah.
That's
All
why I
right,
say
just call them
leftist because
leftist.
it's that's why I say it because it's just like you. I don't exactly know what to call them, but they're all on the left. So I
How
mean,
about
it's
we say,
they're
I
not
mean,
in when you.
yeah, sorry. For your podcast, maybe you guys could create some terms. Like when you guys say leftist, you mean like the people who, like
yeah,
the,
maybe. Why don't
Yeah,
we?
we set ground rules, that type of
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
You set ground rules before the game, before the matchup, and then when the matchup ends, so you're all free.
yeah,
Jeez, okay, but you know, but as I was saying, Joe Biden has done everything that someone gets canceled for. Like you
yes,
name it, he's probably done it except for blackface.
yeah. And
So
remember Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia? Yeah, that was. He was also exempt, except the right held him accountable, the left did not. And
yep,
that's it was a bad thing, really. He apologized, which is good, and apparently he learns from his mistake. But we have to ask, why wasn't he more vilified among the Democrats? And I think it was probably
because he
because he was a moderate guy, and the older population backed him up. That's about as real as it gets.
mhm. And with that, God, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but jeez, hold on, I gotta remember it. Like why? Yeah, but like I question I did have that question for a long time. Oh, and I remember it now. So the left the left and Democrats, this is one of those things where I can kind of make that blanket statement. They like blanket statements are awful, but this is one of those statements that kind of you can agree with. They are trying to fight for, different groups of people to be represented in different roles in government. Like, they don't want any of these old white men in office anymore.
Mm.
But I question Joe Biden is an old white man.
Yeah, that's
So is
that's the
Bernie
problem.
Sanders, by the
Well,
way.
Yeah, so is Bernie Sanders.
ideally we would have had someone younger, but then again, speaking on behalf of the left, the thing is, a lot of left wingers take what they can get. And when people like Biden, we have to remember that Biden is bankrolled. If a candidate is bankrolled, is given all the money, the resources, is favored by the DNC, he's going to win. It happened in 2016 with Hillary, and it happened again this year with Biden.
Because they want someone from the Obama
They
coalition.
want someone who's a centrist, ideally further to the right. If we actually take a look at the political compass, Biden, Hillary, they're all technically right wingers.
Which I
And
don't, that's really weird. I don't get that, but
I mean, the American Democratic Party, like the moderate faction, is pretty right wing compared to European liberal groups.
interesting.
I mean,
Hmm.
I say this
Didn't
as
know that. I
somebody who
didn't know that.
I say this as somebody who wants to study political science, and political science is basically
Nice.
all about, you know, who's left, who's right, who's this, that, and the other. If we take a look at the Democratic Party, it's more right wing. At least the moderate faction is right wing on a European scale.
Huh. Wow. Never knew that. Yeah. That's cool.
That's cool and weird at the same
Cool.
time.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
That's why that is precisely why people like Biden and Hillary keep winning, though, because honestly, the establishment is more, shall I say, right wing or more centrist, and the younger people are more left wing. So it makes
and
sense.
and I do just want to say this: the three, or well, I would say this: there's four Democratic candidates that I liked a lot. Four of them, and you could even throw a fifth one in there. Tulsi Gabbard 1, Andrew Yang 2, Pete Buttigieg 3, Amy Klobuchar 4, and then the fifth one is Cory Booker. I also really liked Cory Booker. And the one common theme is that none of them are old white men.
Yes, and except they
They're
were not
they're they're
bankrolled.
all they're all they're all young, and there's a lot. There three of those five are women, and they're and only like and a couple are white.
Yes.
So
But the key theme in all of them, as I'm going to wrap up I'm going to make my closing statements here since we've been going a pretty long time now. It's been
Yeah.
like
an
an
hour
hour
and
and
a
a
half.
half. So
Jeez.
for my
That's
closing,
how you know it's been a good episode, though.
yeah, for my closing statement, I'm pretty much going to say we have to recognize that whoever gets the most money, whoever's bankrolled by the, already established community is going to win the Democratic primary. Bernie,
Exactly.
as much as I like the man, he didn't stand a chance because if you have the money from the establishment, from the support of the establishment, you are going to win. That's it.
It's funny how political elections are now based on money. Then
That's
I
just a
get
common theme
common
now.
ideas.
Well, that's the what do you call it?
The way of
FTC,
life.
that Supreme Court case that ruled on
Yeah, Citizens
corporations.
United.
There, yeah, thank you. Yes, Citizens United. Yeah, that's why they're mainly about money. I mean, that's partly you could arguably that's partly what's created that.
Exactly.
Joe, would you like to make your finishing statements?
Sure. Might just be a similar echo to what I've been saying, but the United States is right now is in a very tough spot, especially it's in a very racially unrest state. There's lots of tribalism going on, and I think that we ideally, ideally, we should all be able to come together and be willing to agree to disagree and have some civil discourse and discussion to try to figure out some ideas on how to, improve our society. But unfortunately, that's just not the way anybody wants it to work. You've seen the people on Instagram. You've seen them. They are blunt. They don't want to hear your opinion. They do not want to have civil discourse with you. As you heard from Noah's very blunt example, which couldn't be more conspicuous than that. That
Not
sums
not
up.
to not to mention, I've also disagreed with other people who post stuff like that, and they all leave me unread. They don't even
Yeah.
respond.
Yep.
That's just a dick move.
But let me just say this: whenever I disagree with people who post Republican stuff, they all respond with a reasonable enough argument. I do just want
Exactly.
to put that one
And
out
I
there.
think that people have abstained from critical thinking, from civil discourse, and from partly ethics, because part of ethics is to still respect someone, even if it goes against, even if their values, morals, or political opinion is in opposition or is not or is unsimilar to yours. These these radical leftists, these leftists that are all over the place saying that they stand for equality, they claim to be the side of goodness, of value, and they are just simply not, because you go against your own what you're standing for when you first say that you are not willing to hear the other side, or not willing to expand your view in any way. And you don't even have to, you could still believe a lot of what you believe, but you're not even willing to listen to the other side or to any other side or to anybody that dares to be skeptical of one or a few, however many concepts that you are trying to put forth as the means of policy in the United States, you know? And I think that they're a very dangerous and disheartening group to our
Yeah.
civil discourse and our country as a whole. I think they are creating more and more division, and I think that the way to sum them up, as I said before, and as I will continue, you know, to learn more about, and perhaps my view may change, and I'm open to that. But I see these people as neo Marxists, and I guess that would be my
Hmm.
last statement.
For me, my closing statement is we need to open up our eyes as people. I'm going to say it very bluntly. We need to open up our eyes. We are so prone to put ourselves in these echo chambers and not even expand our views, which is why I love being on a podcast with two people who have also kind of because for me I've kind of flip flopped on the political spectrum because I'm always continuously learning and expanding my view. I'm happy that I'm on the podcast with two people who, switched both ways because you really get the full view of, um, I want to say politics in general, but, as we said before, it's not a political issue on some aspects,
Yeah,
um, but as it stands, I think we need to open up our eyes and at least be willing enough to have conversations if we're going to make claims. And keep in mind, Max and I talk almost every day about political issues. We send each other stuff that we agree with or disagree with, and we have conversations about it. And one day I remember this day very well. We had a conversation about illegal immigration into the country and what is going on there and you know we came into it with two completely different views, and after looking at numbers and reviewing the situation, we both actually met up in the same spot at the end and about how we feel about illegal immigration and how we should handle the situation. And I think is how America should work. Max, you remember that, right?
Exactly. It was actually a
And
pretty good argument in the end.
mhm. Well, it wasn't even really an argument, it was a
Yeah, it
conversation,
was
and
it was
that's
more
how
of
you
a
do it.
civil discourse. That's what I love about society, honestly.
Hmm. And that's how I think. That's how
the
I
rules.
like that. That's how I feel like we should all be in these situations. We shouldn't be so closed off to opposing views, and that's why. And that's why I said this at the start of the podcast, and I say this almost every podcast, and I want to put this on my story. If you if you disagree with me at all with anything that I say on these podcasts, and this goes out to the audience watching, feel free to contest it. Feel free to disagree with it and just be civil about it. And maybe I'll let you on a podcast episode because I have invited people onto the podcast before that have disagreed with me. And I do have this situation. The girl that um, said that I don't understand what racism is because I'm Jewish and that I was racially gaslighting by believing in innocent until proven guilty. I invited her onto a podcast episode, and she declined it. But take that as you might, take that as you may. Um, but I just want to say, if you disagree with anything, just be civil about it. Have a conversation. Maybe you will, question yourself because that's a part of critical thinking. You got to make sure that you get to that. You got to be at that point if you're
Exactly.
mature enough to have conversations on this topic.
Hmm.
So, anything more from you two?
I think I'm
Uh,
good.
I'd
Uh,
say, it was a great podcast, and I wish everybody a great day.
It was.
Mm,
Thanks for having me.
yep,
Uh,
yep. And hopefully we can have you again, Joe. You were a great addition to this podcast for
Thank you.
this episode.
Indeed.
And
Uh,
so I guess I'll wrap this one up here after minute 45 of talking. I just want to say thank you everybody for tuning in, if you listen throughout this whole thing, you are a real one. And as I said, if you disagree with anything I said, feel free to contest it. And I'm willing to let people onto the podcast. I'm not going to gatekeep this podcast because I feel like the whole point of this podcast is discussion. And so, everyone, thank you for tuning in. It was absolutely amazing. Um, so,
Will
Max,
this
would you
go up
like
on
to
YouTube, by the way? Sorry.
Yes. These podcasts are always up on YouTube on the Gaming Goldfish
All right.
account that I have. Um, Max, would you, just like last time, would you like to take us out here?
All right, I suppose so. So I'd say everybody have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you're listening, and thank you for paying attention. I mean, you guys are real homies as far as I'm concerned. So enjoy your day.
All right. See you guys. And